This audiobook teaches you how to remain steady regardless of external pressure. You are not tired. You are not broken. You are not overwhelmed by life. You are overwhelmed because you have no inner control. Every reaction drains you. Every emotional spike weakens you. Every time the outside world dictates how you feel, you lose power. This audiobook is not about motivation. It is about command. Command over your emotions. Command over your impulses. Command over yourself. You have a choice. React like everyone else, or master the art of inner control and become unshakable. That's the key. Let's begin. Blue Book Chapter 1. Stop letting the world decide your mood. Most people wake up already defeated, not because something bad happened, but because they gave the outside world permission to control how they feel. A message ruins their mood. A comment triggers anger. A delay creates anxiety. A look, a tone, a situation. Suddenly their inner state is no longer theirs. That's not life. That's emotional slavery. Here is the truth most people never accept. External events are neutral. They have no power on their own. Zero. The power is injected by your reaction. That's the key. The moment you react emotionally, you surrender control. You hand your internal state to something you cannot control. You have a choice. You always have a choice. React automatically like everyone else, or pause and take command. It's not about what happens. It's about how you respond. Say it again. It's not about what happens. It's about how you respond. Most people confuse reaction with authenticity. They think, this is just how I feel. No, this is just how you were conditioned. Conditioned to snap back. Conditioned to defend. Conditioned to explain. Conditioned to panic. And because you react, you become predictable. Predictable people are easy to manipulate. That's why calm individuals always dominate outcomes. Think about it. In an argument, who has more power? The one yelling, or the one sitting still, silent, watching? In a crisis, who becomes the leader? The one panicking, or the one breathing slowly, giving clear instructions? In pressure situations, calm is not weakness. Calm is dominance. You've seen this in real life. The manager who doesn't raise their voice but everyone listens. The negotiator who speaks less but controls the room. The person who gets insulted and doesn't flinch, and suddenly the insulter feels small. Why? Because emotional control signals strength. It says, you can't move me. It says, I decide when something matters. It says, you don't own my nervous system. You don't need their permission to stay calm. You don't need their approval to remain steady. That's the key. Most people let their mood be decided by circumstances. Traffic decides their mood. Work decides their mood. Other people decide their mood. And then they wonder why they feel exhausted. Here's the uncomfortable truth. If your mood depends on the world behaving nicely, you will never have peace. Because the world doesn't care about your comfort. So stop asking it to. Instead, build internal authority. Internal authority means this. No matter what happens outside, you remain centered inside. Not numb. Not passive. Centered. It's not about suppressing emotion. It's about mastering it. It's not about pretending you don't feel. It's about choosing how you respond. You have a choice. Let's make this practical. Next time something triggers you, do not react immediately. Do nothing for 3 seconds. 3 seconds. That pause is where control lives. In those 3 seconds, say this internally. An event occurred. That's it. No story. No interpretation. No emotional label. Just a fact. Someone criticized you. That's an event. Someone ignored you. That's an event. Something didn't go your way. That's an event. Your suffering begins when you add meaning. They disrespected me. I'm not valued. This always happens to me. That's the poison. It's not about the event. It's about the narrative you attach to it. That's the key. Calm people don't have fewer problems. They have fewer unnecessary reactions. They don't rush to defend their ego. They don't rush to prove anything. They don't rush to be understood. You don't need their permission to remain composed. You don't need to explain yourself to feel safe. Here's another exercise. When you feel emotional pressure rising, anger, anxiety, frustration, label it. Silently say, "This is anger. This is anxiety. This is frustration." Labeling creates distance. Distance creates control. You are no longer inside the emotion. You are observing it. And the moment you observe, you are no longer controlled by it. That's the key. This is not about becoming cold. It's about becoming precise. It's not about being emotionless. It's about being intentional. People who lack inner control believe emotions happen to them. People who master inner control understand emotions happen within them and can be regulated. Big difference. You have a choice. Every reaction you don't give strengthens you. Every pause you take builds discipline. Every moment you stay calm under pressure rewires your nervous system. At first, it will feel unnatural. That's normal. Discipline always feels uncomfortable before it feels powerful. But over time, something shifts. You stop feeling dragged by situations. You stop feeling hijacked by other people's moods. You stop feeling exhausted by emotional chaos. You become steady, and steadiness is rare. That's why it commands respect without asking for it. Remember this, it's not about what happens. It's about how you respond. Say it until it becomes instinct. You don't need their permission to be calm. You don't need perfect conditions to be centered. You only need discipline, because it's not about emotional weakness. It's about emotional discipline. That's the foundation. Once you stop letting the world decide your mood, you reclaim power. And now that you understand how reactions steal your control, it's time to confront the deeper truth. Why emotional reactions are not just costly, but a form of weakness. Blue Book Chapter 2. Emotional reactions are a form of weakness. Most people believe reacting fast means they are strong. They think speed equals power. They think intensity equals authenticity. They think emotion equals honesty. They are wrong. Reacting instantly feels natural, but it is not strength. It is training. That's the key most people never learn. From childhood, you were trained to react. Praise makes you excited. Criticism makes you defensive. Threats make you anxious. Pressure makes you panic. None of that happened by accident. Your nervous system learned patterns. And patterns create predictability. If they can predict you, they can control you. Say it again. If they can predict you, they can control you. Anger is predictable. Defensiveness is predictable. Anxiety is predictable. That's why emotional people are easy to manipulate. Think about it. If someone knows insults make you explode, they own a button. If someone knows silence makes you anxious, they own leverage. If someone knows pressure makes you fold, they own timing. You don't need their permission to stop being predictable. That's the key. Emotional reactions feel powerful in the moment, but they are weak long-term. Why? Because reactions remove choice. The moment you react, the decision is no longer yours. Your body decides. Your conditioning decides. Your past decides. You have a choice, but only if you don't react. Weakness is not feeling emotion. Weakness is being unable to control it. It's not about anger. It's about discipline. It's not about fear. It's about discipline. It's not about anxiety. It's about discipline. Strong people feel emotions deeply, but they don't let emotions drive behavior. That's the difference. Watch how people react under pressure. One person raises their voice. Another lowers it. One person explains themselves aggressively. Another says nothing. One person rushes to defend their ego. Another watches, unmoved. Who looks powerful? Always the one who remains steady. That's not luck. That's control. Anger, defensiveness, and anxiety all send the same signal to the world. I am affected. I am triggered. I am open. Predators, social or professional, look for that. They look for emotional leakage. They look for reactions. Because reactions reveal weakness. If you want authority, remove predictability. That's the key. Let's break this down. Anger. Anger feels dominant, but it is actually exposure. The moment you get angry, you show what matters to you. You show where you're sensitive. You show how to move you. Controlled anger can be used strategically. Uncontrolled anger is free information. Defensiveness. Defensiveness screams insecurity. The need to explain. The need to justify. The need to prove. You don't need their permission to stay silent. Strong people let accusations hang. Weak people rush to erase them. Anxiety. Anxiety signals lack of self-trust. It tells the world you don't believe you can handle uncertainty. So others step in or step over you. If they can predict you, they can control you. That's the rule. Now the uncomfortable truth. Most people would rather feel right than be in control. They want to vent. They want to react. They want to express. But expression without control is weakness. It's not about being cold. It's about being selective. You have a choice. Here's the discipline you must build. Delay response. Always. No instant replies. No emotional messages. No reactive decisions. When emotion rises, delay action. Delay gives you power. Delay breaks predictability. That's the key. Next, reduce emotional tells. Stop broadcasting how you feel. Stop announcing frustration. Stop narrating your inner state. Silence creates uncertainty for others, and uncertainty shifts power back to you. You don't need their permission to be unreadable. Here's a practical drill. When you feel triggered, do this. Breathe in slowly for 4 seconds. Hold for 2. Breathe out for 6. Longer exhale calms the nervous system. Then ask yourself one question. What is the controlled response here? Not the honest one. Not the emotional one. The controlled one. That's discipline. Strong people don't ask, "How do I feel?" They ask, "What is useful?" That's the key. You will notice something important over time. The fewer reactions you give, the fewer tests you receive. People test boundaries through emotion. When there's no reaction, they stop trying. Calm discourages manipulation. Predictability invites it. Remember, if they can predict you, they can control you. Remove predictability. This chapter is not telling you to suppress emotion forever. That creates damage. This chapter is teaching you to choose timing. Emotion delayed is not emotion denied. It is emotion mastered. You have a choice. React and feel relief for 10 seconds. Or hold control and gain respect for years. That's the trade. Every time you resist reacting, you strengthen authority. Every time you stay calm, you weaken external influence. It's not about emotional weakness. It's about emotional discipline. Say it until it sticks. Because once you stop reacting, something powerful happens. You create silence. And silence is not empty. Silence is pressure. Silence forces others to reveal themselves. Silence exposes intentions. Silence shifts control. And that brings us to the next discipline. You've learned why reactions weaken you. Now it's time to learn the weapon that replaces them. Blue Book Chapter 3. Silence is the highest form of control. Most people are afraid of silence. They rush to fill it. They rush to explain. They rush to justify. Why? Because silence feels like loss of control. In reality, silence is control. That's the key. Silence is not weakness. Silence is pressure. When you stay silent, something important happens. The spotlight shifts. Others start talking. Others start revealing. Others start leaking information. And you remain unreadable. You don't need their permission to stay quiet. Say that again. You don't need their permission to stay quiet. Most people speak to relieve discomfort. Strong people stay silent to create it. That's the difference. Silence forces others to show their hand. Words expose intention. Emotion exposes insecurity. Silence exposes everything without you saying a word. That's why the calmest person owns the room. Say it slowly. The calmest person owns the room. Think about a negotiation. One side keeps talking, explaining, defending their position. The other side listens, nods, says nothing. Who has leverage? Always the silent one. Because silence creates uncertainty. And uncertainty makes people negotiate against themselves. They offer more. They reveal priorities. They lower standards. Not because you pressured them. Because silence did. That's the key. Now think about conflict. Someone insults you, provokes you, waits for a reaction. You say nothing. No anger. No defense. No explanation. What happens? The power dynamic flips. The attacker feels exposed. They wonder if they went too far. They start justifying themselves. Silence forces self-reflection. Noise invites chaos. You have a choice. Fill the silence and lose leverage. Or hold it and gain control. Most people talk because they fear being misunderstood. But strength does not require understanding. It requires boundaries. And silence is the strongest boundary. You don't need their approval to pause. You don't need their validation to withhold response. That's the key. Let's address the biggest lie people believe. If I don't respond, I look weak. Wrong. If you over-respond, you look insecure. Silence communicates confidence. It says, I don't need to prove anything. It says, I am comfortable with myself. It says, I decide when this conversation moves forward. The calmest person owns the room. Watch leaders who command respect. They don't rush their words. They don't explain unnecessarily. They don't answer every challenge. They pause. That pause is dominance, because silence slows the tempo, and whoever controls the tempo controls the interaction. That's the key. Here's how silence works in real life. In negotiations, after making an offer, stop talking. Let the silence stretch. The other person will speak first. They always do. And when they do, they reveal their leverage or lack of it. In arguments, when accused, say nothing. Let the accusation hang. False accusations collapse under silence. True ones don't require defense. In confrontations, when provoked, breathe and hold eye contact. Say nothing. Silence signals confidence. Confidence discourages escalation. You don't need their permission to disengage. Now let's talk discipline. Silence is uncomfortable at first. That's why it's powerful. Your nervous system wants relief. Talking provides relief. But discipline means choosing long-term control over short-term comfort. It's not about fear. It's about discipline. It's not about shyness. It's about discipline. It's not about being passive. It's about discipline. Strong silence is intentional. Weak silence is avoidance. Know the difference. Strong silence comes from inner stability. Weak silence comes from fear. So how do you build strong silence? First, slow your response time. No instant replies. No rushed explanations. Pause before speaking. Always. Second, reduce verbal output. Say less but mean more. Remove filler. Remove justifications. Every unnecessary word reduces authority. Third, use silence strategically. After you speak, stop. Let your words land. Silence amplifies meaning. That's the key. You'll notice something interesting when you practice this. People start respecting you more. Not because you demand it, but because your presence feels grounded. Silence makes people listen. Noise makes people dismiss. The calmest person owns the room. Repeat it until it becomes instinct. Now here's the deeper truth. Silence only works if you are emotionally detached. If you are silent but boiling inside, people feel it. Tension leaks. Real silence comes from inner control. That's why this book is not about tricks. It's about mastery. You have a choice. Use silence as a weapon, or keep using words to expose yourself. Words are easy. Silence requires strength, and strength changes everything. Once you master silence, something shifts internally. You stop needing reactions. You stop craving validation. You stop chasing control externally. You start holding it internally. That's the art. But silence alone is not enough. To sustain it, you must detach emotionally. Not disconnect. Detach. Because emotion is what pulls words out of you. And that brings us to the next discipline. You've learned how silence gives you control. Now it's time to learn how emotional detachment makes that control permanent. Blue Book Chapter 4. Detach emotion to gain power. Most people misunderstand detachment. They think detachment means you don't care. They think it means you're cold. They think it means you're disconnected from life. Wrong. Detachment is not apathy. Detachment is precision. That's the key. Detachment does not remove emotion. It removes emotion from the driver's seat. It's not about being heartless. It's about being disciplined. Say it clearly. It's not about being cold. It's about being disciplined. Emotion clouds judgment. Control clears it. Repeat that. Emotion clouds judgment. Control clears it. Look at every bad decision you've ever made. Anger said something it couldn't take back. Fear chose safety over growth. Anxiety rushed a decision that needed patience. Attachment kept you in situations you should have left. Emotion didn't advise you. It hijacked you. And every time emotion leads, clarity disappears. You have a choice. Let emotion command your actions, or observe it and decide anyway. Strong people don't eliminate emotion. They separate it from action. That separation is power. Detachment means this. You feel fully, but you act selectively. You notice the emotion. You acknowledge it. And then you choose behavior independent of it. That's discipline. Most people collapse the two. They feel angry, so they act angry. They feel afraid, so they retreat. They feel insecure, so they over-explain. That's weakness. Not because emotion exists, but because discipline doesn't. It's not about emotional weakness. It's about emotional discipline. That's the key. Under pressure, emotional distance sharpens everything. When others panic, you see options. When others rush, you see timing. When others react, you see leverage. Calm does not slow you down. It speeds you up accurately. Think of surgeons. Think of pilots. Think of elite operators. Do they lack emotion? No, they control it. Because precision requires detachment. Emotion clouds judgment. Control clears it. Say it until it sticks. Now let's get practical. Detachment begins internally, not externally. You don't detach from people. You detach from outcomes. Attachment to outcomes creates fear. Fear creates emotional pressure. Pressure creates bad decisions. When you need a specific result, you lose leverage. You don't need their permission to release attachment. That's the key. Here's the shift you must make. Instead of asking, "How do I feel about this?" ask, "What does this situation require?" One question is emotional. The other is strategic. Strong people operate strategically. Here's a simple framework. When emotion hits, do three things. First, name it. This is anger. This is fear. This is excitement. Naming creates separation. Second, pause. Do nothing. Let the emotional wave pass. Emotion is temporary. Regret is permanent. Third, choose action based on values, not feelings. Ask, what action aligns with my standards? That's discipline. You have a choice. Act from emotion, or act from principle. Principles build power. Emotion burns it. Detachment also protects you from manipulation. Emotionally attached people are easy to move. Detach and suddenly you become immovable. If praise controls you, you're owned. If insults control you, you're owned. If fear controls you, you're owned. Detachment cuts the strings. You don't need their permission to stop caring about their approval. That's the key. Let's talk about pressure situations. Deadlines, conflict, uncertainty. Emotion screams, act now. Discipline whispers, observe first. Under pressure, slow down internally, even if you move fast externally. That's control. Emotion wants resolution. Control wants accuracy. Accuracy always wins. Remember this. Fast decisions made calmly beat rushed decisions made emotionally. Every time, emotion clouds judgment. Control clears it. Now let's address the fear people have. They say, if I detach, I'll lose motivation. No, you don't lose motivation. You lose desperation. Desperation is weakness. Purpose is strength. Detach from outcome. Commit to process. That's power. Here's a discipline drill. For the next 7 days, practice emotional distance. When something triggers you, say internally, I see it. I don't need to act. Then wait 10 minutes before responding to anything important. 10 minutes. That delay will save you from decisions you'd regret for years. You have a choice. React fast and feel temporary relief. Or detach and build long-term authority. Authority comes from consistency. Consistency requires discipline. Detachment gives you consistency. This is how leaders are formed. Not by charisma, not by loud confidence, but by emotional control. People trust those who are steady. They follow those who don't panic. They respect those who don't beg outcomes. That's the truth. Detachment does not make you distant. It makes you reliable, and reliability builds respect. It's not about emotional numbness. It's about emotional mastery. Say it again. Emotion clouds judgment. Control clears it. Once you master detachment, something powerful happens. You stop reacting internally. You stop leaking emotion externally. You stop being pulled by every situation. You become centered. And when you are centered, silence becomes effortless. Because silence without detachment is tension. Silence with detachment is dominance. You've learned how to stay quiet. You've learned how to detach. Now it's time to remove one of the biggest emotional leaks most people have. The need to explain. The need to justify. The need to be understood. And that is where real authority is built. You've gained emotional distance. Now let's talk about the behavior that gives that distance away. Blue Book Chapter 5. Stop explaining yourself to feel safe. Most people talk too much. They explain. They justify. They defend. Not because they are clear, but because they are uncomfortable. That's the trap. Over-explaining is not communication. It is a subconscious plea for validation. Read that again. You are not explaining to be understood. You are explaining to feel safe. That's the key. When you over-explain, you are asking for permission. Permission to exist. Permission to decide. Permission to be respected. And the moment you ask for permission, you lose authority. You don't need their approval. You need your standards. Say it slowly. You don't need their approval. You need your standards. Watch how over-explaining shows up. You make a decision and immediately justify it. You say no and rush to soften it. You state a boundary and follow it with excuses. Why? Because silence feels risky. Because disagreement feels dangerous. Because you fear being misunderstood. But here's the truth. Strong people are misunderstood all the time. And they don't correct it. Weak people try to control perception. Strong people control behavior. That's the difference. Over-explaining is emotional leakage. It reveals insecurity. It signals doubt. When you keep talking, you say, I'm not fully confident in this. I need you to agree. I need you to accept me. You don't. That's the key. Confident individuals say less and mean more. They state. They pause. They move on. No defense. No justification. No emotional padding. Because authority does not argue for itself. Think about people you respect. Do they over-explain? Do they rush to convince? Do they justify every move? No. They decide. They act. They let results speak. Results don't need explanations. Now let's be clear. This is not about being rude. This is not about being dismissive. It's about being grounded. It's not about social awkwardness. It's about discipline. Say it clearly. It's not about insecurity. It's about discipline. Most over-explaining comes from fear of judgment. Fear that someone will disagree. Fear that someone will disapprove. Fear that someone will withdraw approval. But approval is not power. Standards are. You have a choice. Chase approval and stay reactive. Or hold standards and stay grounded. That's the key. Let's break down how over-explaining weakens you in real life. At work, you propose an idea. Someone questions it. You panic and start adding reasons, background, history, context. You talk yourself into uncertainty. Now your idea sounds fragile. A confident person would say, "This is the direction I recommend." Pause. Silence. In relationships, you set a boundary. You immediately explain why. You add emotional context. You soften the message. Now the boundary feels negotiable. A strong boundary does not need a story. It needs consistency. In conflict, someone accuses you. You rush to defend every detail. Now you look guilty even if you're not. Silence would have done more for you than words. That's the key. Here's the hard truth. The more you explain, the more people question you. Because explanation invites debate. Debate invites challenge. Challenge invites loss of control. Short statements end conversations. Long explanations extend them. If you want authority, shorten your speech. That's discipline. You don't need their permission to stop talking. Let's talk about what's really happening internally. Over-explaining is emotional self-protection. You are trying to manage how others feel about you, but you can't. And trying to control perception makes you weak. Strong people accept this reality. Some people will misunderstand you. Some people will dislike your decisions. Some people will disapprove. And none of that requires correction. That's power. You don't need their approval. You need your standards. Repeat it. Here's a practical rule. If your explanation is longer than your decision, you are leaking power. Decisions should be clear. Explanations should be optional. Here's the discipline to practice. When you make a statement, stop. Literally stop. Feel the discomfort. Let the silence exist. Silence after a statement signals confidence. Silence says, "I stand by this." You have a choice. Fill the silence to soothe anxiety, or hold it to build authority. That's the key. Another discipline. Stop preemptive explaining. Don't explain before you're asked. Don't defend before you're challenged. Don't justify before there is resistance. Most people explain things no one questioned. Why? Fear. But fear is not a strategy. Discipline is. It's not about social anxiety. It's about emotional discipline. Now here's where detachment comes back in. If you are emotionally detached, you don't need to explain. If you are attached to being liked, you will. That's the connection. Detachment removes the urge to justify. And once you stop explaining, something changes. People listen more carefully. They ask better questions. They respect your time because your words are scarce. Scarcity creates value. That's the key. You will also notice fewer arguments. Why? Because arguments need fuel, and explanations provide fuel. No fuel, no fire. This does not mean you never explain. It means you explain by choice, not by compulsion. There's a difference. Strong people explain when it adds clarity. Weak people explain to relieve anxiety. You choose which one you are. You have a choice. Let go of the need to be understood. Hold onto the need to be aligned with yourself. Alignment creates calm. Calm creates authority. And authority does not beg. It stands. Remember this phrase. You don't need their approval. You need your standards. Say it until it becomes behavior. Once you stop explaining yourself, you reclaim emotional energy. You stop leaking confidence. You stop chasing acceptance. You stop negotiating your position. And that frees you, because now your responses become intentional. And intentional responses require one final discipline. Timing. Not speaking immediately. Not reacting instantly. Not answering on impulse. You've learned how silence builds power. You've learned how detachment keeps you steady. You've learned how over-explaining gives that power away. Now it's time to master the pause that holds it all together. You are no longer reactive. Now you must become deliberate. Blue Book Chapter 6. Train yourself to pause before responding. Most people lose control in the first second. That first second is everything. That's the key. The pause is where power lives. 1 second of control changes everything. Before the words leave your mouth. Before the message is sent. Before the reaction becomes irreversible. That tiny gap is the difference between authority and regret. You have a choice. React instantly like you were trained to, or pause and decide. Strong people pause. Weak people react. It's not about intelligence. It's about discipline. Say it clearly. It's not about impulse. It's about discipline. Most emotional damage happens fast. A sentence you can't take back. A decision made under pressure. A reaction that costs you respect. All because there was no pause. Pause first. Decide second. Speak last. Repeat it. Pause first. Decide second. Speak last. That is the operating system of controlled people. Now understand this. The pause is not hesitation. It is command. Hesitation is confusion. Pause is clarity. When you pause, you take control of tempo. When you control tempo, you control the interaction. That's the key. People who rush feel urgency. People who pause create it. Urgency puts you on defense. Calm puts others on it. You don't need their permission to slow down. Let's talk about the biology. Emotion triggers adrenaline. Adrenaline speeds reaction. Speed reduces accuracy. Pausing interrupts that loop. A single breath changes chemistry. A longer exhale tells the nervous system, stand down. That's discipline. Here is the first drill. The one-breath rule. Whenever you feel triggered, take one slow breath before responding. Inhale through your nose for 4 seconds. Exhale through your mouth for 6. Longer exhale equals control. No exceptions. That one breath buys you clarity. That's the key. Now the second drill. Delayed response training. Stop responding immediately to messages, emails, or comments. Even when you know what to say, wait 5 minutes, then 10, then an hour. Delay builds authority. Instant replies signal availability. Delayed replies signal control. You don't need their permission to take time. The third drill. Internal labeling. When emotion spikes, name it. This is anger. This is anxiety. This is ego. Labeling creates distance. Distance creates choice. Without distance, there is no pause. And without pause, there is no power. Pause first. Decide second. Speak last. Say it again. Now let's talk real-world situations. In arguments, someone says something provocative. Your mind races. Pause. Let silence exist. Silence makes people uncomfortable. Discomfort makes them talk. Talking reveals their position. You gain leverage without effort. At work, you're asked a difficult question. Everyone expects an immediate answer. Pause. Say, "Let me think." That single sentence increases perceived competence. Rushed answers reduce authority. Considered answers build it. In relationships, emotions rise. Voices escalate. Pause. Nothing de-escalates faster than controlled silence. Reacting fuels fire. Pausing removes oxygen. That's the key. Most people fear the pause because they fear judgment. They think silence makes them look weak. But silence with presence looks powerful. The calmest person owns the room. And calm begins with pause. Here's the uncomfortable truth. If you cannot pause, you are not in control. You are being controlled by chemistry. That's not strength. That's habit. You have a choice. Train the pause or stay predictable. If they can predict you, they can control you. The pause breaks predictability. That's why manipulators hate it. They rely on speed. They rely on reaction. They rely on emotional reflex. Pause removes their advantage. You don't need their permission to be deliberate. Now here's a deeper layer. The pause is not just external. It's internal. Even when you don't speak, you can still react inside. That internal reaction leaks through tone, through body language, through micro-expressions. So you must pause internally first. How? Shift attention to the body. Feel your feet. Feel your breath. Feel your posture. Grounding pulls you out of the emotional loop. That's discipline. Emotion wants action. Discipline wants alignment. Alignment wins. Pause first. Decide second. Speak last. Now let's talk about building this as a habit. Start small. Pause before replying to texts. Pause before answering questions. Pause before giving opinions. You don't have to announce it. Just do it. Over time, something changes. People stop rushing you. They wait for your response. They respect your timing. Because timing signals authority. Fast reactions signal compliance. That's the key. You will also notice fewer regrets. Less emotional cleanup. Fewer apologies. Fewer explanations. Because the pause filters bad decisions. Now remember this. Pausing does not mean you never act quickly. It means you choose when speed is appropriate. Speed with control is power. Speed without control is chaos. The pause gives you choice. And choice is the foundation of inner control. You have a choice. Stay reactive and feel busy. Or pause and feel powerful. This chapter is not about being slow. It's about being intentional. It's not about hesitation. It's about discipline. Once you master the pause, your reactions change. Your words become fewer. Your presence becomes heavier. Your decisions become cleaner. And when your internal dialogue quiets down, something else becomes visible. The voice in your head, the constant commentary, the endless interpretation, the internal noise that drives reactions. You've learned to pause externally. Now it's time to control the source. Because the real battle is not with the world. It's with your thoughts. You've slowed your response. Now you must master the voice behind it. Blue Book Chapter 7. Control your inner dialogue or lose the game. The loudest enemy you face is not outside you. It's inside your head. That's the key. You can master silence. You can master detachment. You can master the pause. And still lose if your inner dialogue runs wild. Because reactions don't start with actions. They start with thoughts. You have a choice. Let your thoughts command you, or use them as tools. Thoughts are tools, not commands. Say it again. Thoughts are tools, not commands. Most people never question the voice in their head. They believe it. They obey it. They identify with it. That's the mistake. Your inner dialogue narrates everything. It interprets events. It assigns meaning, creates emotion. And if that narration is emotional, dramatic, and unchecked, you lose control before you even act. That's the game. Look closely at how the inner dialogue sabotages you. A message comes in late. The voice says, "They don't respect you." Someone disagrees. The voice says, "You're being challenged." Something goes wrong. The voice says, "This always happens." None of that is fact. It's interpretation. And interpretation drives emotion. Emotion drives reaction. That's the chain. Break the chain and you regain power. You don't need their permission to question your own thoughts. That's the key. Strong people do not have better thoughts. They have better control over them. They don't argue with every thought. They don't suppress them. They don't dramatize them. They observe them. Observation creates distance. Distance creates choice. You have a choice. Believe every thought and stay reactive. Or step back and stay grounded. Thoughts are tools, not commands. Now let's be precise. There are two types of inner dialogue: emotional narratives and neutral observations. Emotional narratives sound like this: "They disrespected me. I'm failing. This is unfair. I look weak." Neutral observations sound like this: "A comment was made. A result occurred. There is disagreement. There is uncertainty. Same event, different power." Emotional narratives pull you into reaction. Neutral observations keep you in control. That's the key. Your job is not to stop thinking. Your job is to change the format of thought. From narrative to observation. From drama to data. From emotion to information. Let's practice. Next time something triggers you, do not ask, "Why does this bother me?" Ask instead, "What exactly happened?" Without interpretation. Strip it down. Facts only. This immediately lowers emotional charge. Because emotion feeds on story. Remove the story, and emotion loses fuel. That's discipline. Thoughts are tools, not commands. Most people live inside mental noise, replaying conversations, imagining outcomes, predicting disaster. That noise creates anxiety. Anxiety creates urgency. Urgency destroys control. Silence on the outside is useless if the inside is chaos. That's why this chapter matters. You don't need their permission to quiet your own mind. Here's a powerful drill. Narrative interruption. When your mind starts spiraling, interrupt it with one sentence. Stop. That's a story. Say it internally. Then replace the story with a neutral statement. Not positive. Not negative. Neutral. Example. Instead of, "They're trying to undermine me," say, "There is disagreement." Instead of, "I messed everything up," say, "There was an error." This is not denial. It's control. Emotion clouds judgment. Control clears it. Say it again. Thoughts are tools, not commands. Another discipline. Do not rehearse arguments in your head. This is a massive leak of power. When you mentally rehearse, you are training reaction. You are reinforcing emotion. You are exhausting yourself before anything happens. Strong people do not shadowbox imaginary opponents. They wait. They observe. They respond when necessary. You have a choice. Mentally fight battles that don't exist, or conserve energy for reality. That's the key. Let's talk about identity. Many people say, "I am an anxious person. I am an overthinker. I am emotional." No, those are habits, not identities. Habits can be retrained, but only if you stop identifying with the voice. You are not your thoughts. You are the one who hears them. That separation is power. Once you realize this, control becomes possible. Thoughts are tools, not commands. Now here's the hardest part. Some thoughts will feel true. They will feel convincing. They will feel urgent. That doesn't make them useful. Strong people don't ask, "Is this thought true?" They ask, "Is this thought useful?" Usefulness over truth. That's discipline. A thought can be true and still harmful. Control means choosing usefulness. Now apply this under pressure. When tension rises, shift your inner dialogue to commands, not commentary. Instead of, "This is stressful," say, "Breathe, observe, wait." Simple, direct, action-oriented. Your inner voice should guide, not narrate. That's the key. Here's a daily practice. For 5 minutes a day, sit quietly and observe your thoughts. Do not engage. Do not judge. Just notice. This trains the observer muscle. The stronger the observer, the weaker the reaction. Over time, your thoughts slow down. Your emotions soften. Your control deepens. You don't need their permission to train your own mind. Remember this. The world reacts to your inner state. If your mind is chaotic, your life will be too. But when your inner dialogue becomes calm and precise, everything changes. Your responses sharpen. Your presence steadies. Your authority grows. Because calm inside creates calm outside. That's the art of inner control. You've learned to pause. You've learned to detach. You've learned to quiet the noise. Now it's time to redefine calm itself. Because calm is not passive. Calm is dominant. And that's where real power shows. You've mastered the inner battlefield. Now let's show how that calm changes how others respond to you. Blue Book Chapter 8. Calm is not passive. Calm is dominant. Most people misunderstand calm. They think calm means quiet submission. They think calm means backing down. They think calm means weakness. They are wrong. Calm is not passive. Calm is dominant. That's the key. Calm people are not weak. They are untouchable. When others panic, you rise. Say it again. When others panic, you rise. Look around you. In meetings, who controls the room? The one talking the most, or the one speaking last, slowly? In conflict, who holds power? The one yelling, or the one whose voice never changes? In crisis, who becomes the leader? The one reacting emotionally, or the one issuing clear, measured commands? Always the calm one. Calm signals certainty. Certainty creates trust. Trust creates authority. That's the chain. You have a choice. Confuse calm with weakness, or recognize it as dominance. That's the key. Let's be precise. Passive means avoiding action. Calm means choosing action. Passive waits out of fear. Calm waits out of control. Big difference. Calm does not mean you do nothing. It means you do the right thing at the right time with the right intensity. Emotion rushes. Calm calculates. Emotion escalates. Calm stabilizes. Emotion reacts. Calm commands. When others panic, you rise. Think about leadership under pressure. A system fails. A deadline collapses. Crisis erupts. Everyone looks around. Who do they look to? Not the loudest voice. Not the angriest person. Not the most emotional one. They look to the calm one. Because calm communicates. I see the situation. I am not overwhelmed. I can handle this. You don't need their permission to stay calm under pressure. That's the key. Calm also intimidates manipulators. Manipulation feeds on emotion, on urgency, on reaction. Calm starves it. When someone tries to provoke you and you don't react, they lose leverage. When someone tries to rush you and you slow down, they lose control. When someone expects fear and gets calm, they feel exposed. Calm creates psychological distance. Distance creates dominance. That's the key. Let's look at conflict. Someone raises their voice. They want escalation. You lower yours. The dynamic flips. Suddenly they look unstable. You look grounded. The calmest person owns the room. Say it until it's instinct. Calm is not soft. Calm is firm. Calm holds boundaries without emotion. Calm says no without explanation. Calm walks away without apology. You don't need their approval to disengage. That's dominance. Here's the discipline behind calm. Calm is trained, not assumed. It's not a personality trait. It's a skill. Practiced one. Calm comes from preparation, from pausing, from detachment, from controlling inner dialogue. All the work you've done so far leads here. Calm is the visible result of inner control. Emotion clouds judgment. Control clears it. Say it again. When pressure rises, calm narrows focus. Panic widens it. Wide focus overwhelms. Narrow focus executes. That's why calm wins. Now let's get practical. Here's how to project calm dominance. Slow your movements. Fast movements signal anxiety. Slow movements signal control. Lower your voice slightly. People lean in to listen. You set the tempo. Reduce words. Say less but say it clearly. Calm doesn't explain. Calm states. That's the key. Another discipline. Do not mirror chaos. When someone is emotional, don't match their energy. Contrast it. Contrast is powerful. Anger met with anger escalates. Anger met with calm collapses. Because calm exposes irrationality. You have a choice. Match emotion and lose control. Or contrast it and take control. When others panic, you rise. Now let's address the fear people have. They say, if I stay calm, people will walk over me. No, if you stay calm without boundaries, they will. Calm with boundaries is dominance. Boundaries don't require emotion. They require consistency. Calm plus consistency equals authority. That's the formula. You don't need to be aggressive to be respected. You need to be steady. Aggression is often insecurity in disguise. Calm is confidence made visible. That's the truth. Watch high-stakes situations. The pilot during turbulence. The doctor during surgery. The commander under fire. They are not passive. They are calm. Because lives depend on it. Your life depends on it too, just in quieter ways. Every emotional reaction costs energy. Every calm response saves it. Saved energy becomes focus. Focus becomes results. That's dominance. Now here's the deeper layer. Calm creates psychological safety for others. People relax around calm leaders. They think more clearly. They perform better. That makes you valuable. People follow those who stabilize the environment. Calm stabilizes. That's why calm people rise without pushing. When others panic, you rise. Say it again. Calm is also resistance. It resists pressure. It resists manipulation. It resists chaos. Calm refuses to be rushed. Calm refuses to be provoked. Calm refuses to be dragged down. You don't need their permission to remain steady. That's the key. But calm alone is not enough. Calm must be maintained daily, under stress, under boredom, under repetition. That requires discipline, not motivation. Discipline, because it's not about emotional strength. It's about emotional discipline. You've learned how calm creates dominance. Now you must build it daily so it doesn't disappear when tested. Because calm under one crisis is luck. Calm under every crisis is training. You are no longer learning concepts. You are building a system. And that system requires repetition. Daily reinforcement. Daily restraint. Daily practice. You've seen how calm wins in moments. Now it's time to build calm as a permanent state. A state no situation can shake. You've risen when others panic. Now you must make that rise automatic. Blue Book Chapter 9. Build emotional discipline daily. Inner control is not discovered. It is trained. That's the key. Most people wait for a breakthrough, a moment of clarity, a shift in mindset. They wait, and nothing changes. Because control is not a feeling. It is a habit. And habits are built daily. You have a choice. Train discipline on purpose. Or let emotion train you by default. Discipline today creates freedom tomorrow. Say it again. Discipline today creates freedom tomorrow. Inner control does not show up when you need it. It shows up when you've earned it. Under pressure, you don't rise to intention. You fall to training. That's the truth. So if you want calm under chaos, you must practice calm when nothing is happening. That's discipline. Let's be clear. This chapter is not about motivation. Motivation is unreliable. This is about systems. Daily, boring, repeatable systems. Because boredom is where discipline is built. That's the key. Most people think emotional discipline means avoiding emotion. Wrong. It means exposing yourself to it on your terms. Training happens through controlled stress. Just like physical training. You don't become strong by avoiding weight. You become strong by lifting it correctly. Emotion works the same way. Avoidance weakens you. Exposure trains you. You have a choice. Let's build the system. Habit 1. Emotional tracking. If you don't measure it, you can't control it. Every day, ask yourself 3 questions. What emotion showed up today? What triggered it? How did I respond? No judgment. No story. Just data. Emotion becomes manageable when it becomes observable. Observation creates distance. Distance creates control. That's the key. Most people live emotionally blind. They feel, but they don't study. Strong people study themselves. This habit alone will change your awareness. You'll start seeing patterns. Same triggers. Same reactions. Same outcomes. Patterns reveal where discipline is needed. Thoughts are tools, not commands. Now the second habit. Habit 2. Controlled exposure. You don't grow by staying comfortable. You grow by choosing discomfort intentionally. Controlled exposure means this. Put yourself in situations that trigger emotion but stay in control. Speak last in meetings. Delay responses when anxious. Hold silence when provoked. Small challenges. Daily. You don't need their permission to train yourself. Every controlled exposure is a repetition. Every repetition strengthens restraint. It's not about emotional weakness. It's about emotional discipline. That's the key. Here's the rule. Expose but don't explode. Feel but don't react. Emotion rises. You stay steady. That builds capacity. Capacity is power. Now the third habit. Habit 3. Restraint reps. Restraint is a muscle. And like any muscle, it grows through reps. A restraint rep is simple. You feel the urge to react. And you don't. That's it. Don't speak. Don't type. Don't explain. Just hold. 1 rep. You do this dozens of times a day. Someone cuts you off. You don't react. Someone annoys you. You pause. Someone misunderstands you. You let it pass. Each time you choose discipline. Discipline today creates freedom tomorrow. Say it again. Most people think freedom means doing whatever they feel. That's slavery. Real freedom is being unaffected by impulse. That's control. You have a choice. Now let's talk consistency. You don't need perfect days. You need consistent days. Missing 1 rep doesn't matter. Quitting does. Emotional discipline compounds. Small daily control becomes unshakable presence. But only if you show up every day. No drama. No heroics. Just repetition. That's the key. Here's another daily practice. The end-of-day reset. Before sleep, ask, where did I react today? Where did I pause? Where did I choose control? This closes the loop. Learning locks in during reflection. Without reflection, days blur together. Strong people review. Weak people repeat. You choose. You don't need their permission to change your behavior. Now let's address resistance. There will be days you don't feel disciplined. That doesn't matter. Discipline is not emotional. It's procedural. You act because it's time to act, not because you feel like it. That's maturity. Remember, calm under pressure is built during calm moments. Silence under attack is built during silence reps. Control in crisis is built during boredom. That's why most people fail. They only try when it's hard. You train when it's easy. That's the difference. Now understand this. Daily discipline changes your identity. You stop seeing yourself as reactive. You stop seeing yourself as emotional. You start seeing yourself as controlled. Identity follows behavior, not the other way around. You have a choice. Act disciplined and become disciplined. That's the key. Let's simplify. You don't need complex routines. You need three things: awareness, exposure, restraint. Every day. Nothing fancy, but relentless. Because emotional discipline is not built through insight. It's built through repetition. Discipline today creates freedom tomorrow. Say it until it becomes non-negotiable. Over time, something shifts. Your reactions slow down automatically. Your calm becomes natural. Your presence becomes solid. You no longer fight emotion. You outgrow it. And that's when inner control becomes your default state. Not something you try to access. Something you live from. That's the goal. But there is one final step. All this discipline leads somewhere. To a state where nothing outside can move you. Where praise doesn't inflate you. Where criticism doesn't shake you. Where chaos doesn't touch you. You've built the system. You've trained the habits. Now it's time to step into the result. You are no longer practicing control. You are becoming unshakable. And that brings us to the final chapter. You've trained daily. Now let's define the state you've earned. Blue Book Chapter 10. Become internally unshakable. There is a point where the work shows. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Quietly. That's the key. When nothing outside can move you, everything becomes easier. Decisions become cleaner. Conflict loses its grip. Pressure stops feeling personal. You stop reacting. You start choosing. Unshakable inside. Unstoppable outside. Say it again. Unshakable inside. Unstoppable outside. Most people spend their lives trying to control the world. They try to manage people. They try to predict outcomes. They try to remove uncertainty. They fail. Because control was never outside. It was always internal. That's the final truth. When you are internally unshakable, external chaos loses power. Praise doesn't inflate you. Criticism doesn't collapse you. Silence doesn't threaten you. Pressure doesn't rush you. You remain steady. You have a choice. Live dependent on circumstances. Or become independent of them. That's the key. Being unshakable does not mean life becomes easy. It means life becomes simple. Simple because you no longer argue with reality. Simple because you no longer fight emotion. Simple because you no longer need validation to move forward. You act from principle. Principles don't fluctuate. Emotions do. It's not about emotional weakness. It's about emotional discipline. Say it clearly. Unshakable people feel emotion. They just don't obey it. They experience anger without becoming it. They experience fear without surrendering to it. They experience pressure without cracking. That's mastery. Look back at who you were before this work. Reactive. Restless. Pulled by every situation. Now compare that to who you are becoming. Calm. Measured. Grounded. This didn't happen by accident. It happened through choice. You chose to pause. You chose silence. You chose detachment. You chose discipline. Over and over. That's the key. Being unshakable means this. No single moment can hijack your identity. A bad day does not define you. A mistake does not consume you. A challenge does not derail you. You respond. You adjust. You continue. Momentum replaces emotion. That's power. You don't need their permission to remain steady. Now understand this. Being unshakable does not make you rigid. It makes you adaptable. Because flexibility requires calm. Only calm minds adapt well. Panicked minds cling. When you are calm, you can change direction without losing balance. That's why unshakable people progress faster. They don't waste energy recovering from emotional damage. They conserve it. Conserved energy becomes focus. Focus becomes execution. Execution changes lives. Unshakable inside. Unstoppable outside. Here's how this shows up in real life. When plans fail, you don't spiral. You revise. When people disappoint you, you don't chase explanations. You update boundaries. When pressure rises, you don't rush. You slow down internally and move decisively externally. That's control. You are no longer emotional in your decision-making. You are deliberate. Deliberate beats emotional every time. That's the key. Now let's address the final fear. People worry that becoming unshakable will make them distant. It won't. It will make you reliable. People trust those who don't fluctuate. They feel safe around those who don't explode. They respect those who don't beg. Unshakable people create stability around them. And stability attracts opportunity. This is why everything becomes easier. Not because the world changes, but because you do. You have a choice. Keep chasing emotional relief, or build emotional command. Relief fades. Command compounds. Unshakable inside. Unstoppable outside. Remember this discipline moving forward. Every day you will be tested. Not with big moments. With small ones. Comment. A delay. A disagreement. Those moments are not obstacles. They are reps. Every time you choose control, you reinforce identity. Identity is built through behavior. An identity once formed runs on autopilot. That's freedom. Discipline today creates freedom tomorrow. Say it again. Now let's tie this back to the core truth of this book. Inner control is not about dominance over others. It's about sovereignty over yourself. When you own yourself, no one else can. That's the art. You no longer need to prove. You no longer need to react. You no longer need to explain. You move quietly. You decide cleanly. You act precisely. The world feels smaller, not because it shrinks, but because you stop being pushed around by it. That's the final transformation. You have a choice. Return to old patterns, or live from this standard. Standards matter. They are what you do when no one is watching. They are how you respond when no one applauds. They are how you behave when it would be easier to react. Unshakable people honor standards even under pressure, especially under pressure. That's the key. From this point forward, remember one thing. Calm is not something you hope for. It is something you practice. Daily. Relentlessly. And the reward is not applause. The reward is freedom. Freedom from emotional volatility. Freedom from external control. Freedom from being pulled off center. You stop reacting. You start choosing. Unshakable inside. Unstoppable outside. This is not the end of the work. It is the beginning of the standard. And now you know the truth. Inner control is not rare because it's complicated. It's rare because it requires discipline. But you've proven something important. You can choose. That's the key. Carry it with you, and never give it away. You've heard the truth now. Your life does not lack opportunity. It lacks inner control. Every time you react, you give power away. Every time you stay calm, you take it back. You have a choice. You always did. Stay emotional. Stay reactive. Stay predictable. Or do the harder thing. Pause. Observe. Decide. Control your inner world, and the outer world loses its grip on you. That's the key. Starting today, don't react. Command. The art of inner control is now yours.